Okay, so we're going to subtract with renaming. A synonym for renaming. If we weren't using mixed numbers, we would call this regrouping. Okay? Or borrowing. If you're subtracting with whole numbers, they call it regrouping or borrowing. Okay? Because we're using fractions, they call it renaming. Alright, so our first example is a black sea cucumber has an average length of 2 feet. A spotted sea cucumber has an average length of 1 1/3 feet. How much longer is the average black sea cucumber than the average spotted sea cucumber? Alright? Now, fractions. We can make them equal one whole, no matter what the denominator is. Only one thing has to be true, and we do it when we regroup all the time. I mean, not when we regroup, sorry. We do this when we're finding common denominators. When we multiply a fraction by something, in order to change the denominator, what do we multiply it by?
A number?
What do we multiply it by? We just did a whole bunch of them. If I wanted to change 1/2 into something over 8, how would I do it?
You would multiply a fraction.
But what fraction?
Oh, the one that needs to be changed.
If I was multiplying 1/2 by something to get something over 8, what would I multiply 1/2 by?
4. 4 and 4.
4 over 4, so 4/4, which is equal to what?
1 whole.
1 whole. So what we need to realize is that any fraction is equal to 1 whole if the numerator and the denominator are the same. It doesn't matter what they are. If it's 7 over 7, it's 1. If it's 6 over 6, it's 1. If it's 9 over 9, it's 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 2 and we're going to change it into a fraction that equals 1 and 1. So we're going to take 2 and we're going to say, okay, it's now going to be 1. I'm going to subtract it from 1 1/3. So what denominator should the fraction be that I'm going to make the other 1 out of? Because when I'm subtracting, what do I know about my denominators when I'm subtracting? Yes. They have to be the same. So if I have a fraction with a denominator of 3, what do I want my fraction to have a denominator of here? 3. So what do I put over 3 to make it 1?
3.
Is 1 3/3 the same as 2?
Yes.
It is, right?
Yeah.
So now I have 1 3/3 minus 1 1/3. Okay? 1 minus 1 is, which I don't have to write, but I wrote it for you guys. 3/3 minus 1/3 is
2/3.
There's our answer. How does that work? Well, it's pretty, this is what we do. We have 2 holes here. We take one of these holes and we separate it into 3 pieces. Why do we do that? Because now when we look at, we have 1 1/3. So now I'm going to take away or subtract 1 whole and 1/3, which is going to leave me with how many of these thirds over here? So there's my 2/3. That's our answer. Okay? So how did we start it off? We started off by renaming 2 as 1 1/3. And when we subtracted it all, we got 2/3. Okay, so far so good?
Yep.
Okay. So the black sea cucumber is 2/3 of a foot longer than the average spotted sea cucumber. Check for reasonableness. We come back here. Here's our estimation. Okay, 2 subtract. It's saying subtract 1 because the 1 over the 3 is closer to 0 than it is 3. So that's 0. So 1 plus 0 is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. Check for reasonableness. 1 is about 2/3, which it is. Okay? Our next one. Now they're going to change things up on us. They're going to give us two numbers that don't have a common denominator. So the first thing we have to do is find the common denominator. Before we do anything else, what are we going to do? Find the common denominator. So I have 1/4 and 5/8. So I'm going to start with my 1/4. How am I going to change that to something over 8? Yes.
You multiply it by 2 over 2.
Multiply by 2 over 2. So that's what they did right here for us. Okay? So 1 times 2 is 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So here's our answer. So we take 1/4, multiply that by 2 over 2, which equals 2/8. So now I have 4 and 2/8. Okay? Now my denominators are the same. I'm not worried about this up here anymore. Not worried about that. It doesn't matter. I did it. I'm finished with it. Don't look at it anymore. Okay? I will take my scribbles out so you guys can write it. Okay? But don't look at it anymore. Once you're done with it, you're done with it. Now I have a whole new problem. I have 4 and 2/8. Subtract 2 and 5/8. Okay? I now have another problem. You need 2 kids back?
Yeah.
Can somebody tell me what the next problem is with my subtraction problem? Nobody knows? You don't see it?
I
Yes?
have to see, make a better door than the girl window.
What's that?
Now we can see.
What's that?
That's in front of the 2.
This is a 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I take 5 away from 2?
No, no.
So, remember what I said? It's the same thing as borrowing or regrouping. We're going to rename it now. I'm going to take my 4, and I'm going to make it 3 with a fraction that's equal to 1. What's that fraction that I'm going to use? What denominators do I have right now?
Oh, 8 over 8.
So I want to use the same denominator because it makes my math easy. 3 and 8/8 is equal to 4.
Yes.
Okay. I need to add the fraction that was still there, which is 2/8. So what do I end up with?
10/8.
So now I have 3
3 10/8.
and 10/8. I have 31 that are gone. Okay. So now we have 3 and 10/8. See, we fixed our problem now. Because now when I put 3 and 10/8 minus 2 and 5/8, I can actually do it. 3 minus 2 is 3 minus 2 is
What?
10 minus 5 is
5.
1 and 5/8. Okay. Alright, I know I didn't use our little box over here, but that would be 3 and 10/8, which is what it says right there. Okay. So we good?
Yeah.
So far so good? Alright. Remember what I said about mistakes? This is what our book wrote for us. It's completely wrong.
Does the book have a master's degree?
I don't know. But you can see that they didn't even start off with, we had 4 and a 4, okay? So ignore this part. Subtract 2 and 5/8, okay? We then change this to 4 and 2/8, subtract 2 and 5/8, right? we said we can't take 5 out of 2, so then we regroup this to 3 and 8 eighths plus the 2 eighths. Because remember, 3 and 8 eighths, that's 3, that's 1, which equals 4. Subtract 2 and 5 eighths. Okay? We did this problem first. Then we subtracted the 2 and 5 eighths. 3 subtract 2 is 1. 10 subtract 5 is 5. The 8 stays the same. We have 1 and 5 eighths. Okay. If you try to do this all at once, you're going to mess it up. So, 3 steps. 1, common denominator. And I'm going to write into my problem here. Write these 3 steps down. Make sure that you do them in this order and you'll be fine. You're going to find the common denominator. After we find the common denominator, what are we going to do? Here's the common denominator. Look at it. So here's our problem. This is our first step. Here's our common denominator. What do I do next? Yes, sir.
I was asking for a band-aid.
Not yet.
Okay.
If this is my first step, what am I doing in my next step?
Adding?
What is this?
Oh, making a whole number, I guess. Making a fraction. Oh,
Making a fraction, but what do we call it? Renaming.
Renaming.
So you're going to rename the whole number. Okay? So we go from having a whole number to having a whole number and a fraction. That's step 2. Okay? Once you rename the whole number to a whole number and a fraction, you can combine. Sorry, there's going to be 4 steps. So you're going to combine. Well, if there was a fraction already. So remember in our first example, it was just the number 2. So in our first example, this step would not exist because there was not a fraction to combine. But you're going to combine your fractions. Okay, so in this one, we have 1. Here's our second step. Our third step is actually adding the 2 fractions together. So there's our third step. Once we've done all that, what can we do? Or solve, right? So our fourth step would be solve. And as long as you find the common denominator, then rename your whole number, combine the fractions in that mixed number where you renamed your whole number, and then solve, you've done all these individually. They're just asking you to do it together. Okay? Remember, when we're renaming, the fraction is going to have, what are we going to use for a denominator for that fraction when we rename it? How are we going to decide what to use?
The denominator goes up to the top, too?
Whatever the common denominator is, that's what we're going to use to make that fraction a whole number. 1 whole. Okay? So if our common denominators in this case are 8, see, we changed the common denominators, we have 8s. That means we're going to take 4, we're going to reduce the 4 by 1 whole, which is 3. the one whole will be 8 over 8. If our common denominators were 4, it would be 4 over 4. Okay? Alright. So, your guided practice for today. This one already has a common denominator. So we don't have to do the first step. See, step 1 is done for us, right? Okay? After we make sure they both have common denominators, next thing, can I take 4? Can I subtract 4 from 2? I cannot. So now I have to rename the 5. What am I going to rename the 5 to? 4 and what? 4 and what? 5/5. Then I have to add the fraction that's already there, which is what? 2/5. So this equals 4. 5 plus 2 is 7 over 5. Now I'm going to subtract. Or they already have it written down for us, so I can take this, plug it into our boxes over here. So 4 7/5. Alright. 4 subtract 3 is 7 subtract 4 is the 5 stays the same. Okay. Are you guys good to go?
Yeah.
One more? One more. Okay. I'm going to do number 3 because it doesn't have a common denominator. Okay? So number 2 you guys should be good with. Number 3. Remember our first step, common denominator, right? So I need to take 1/3 and make it something over 6. So 1/3. What am I going to multiply that by?
2. 2 over 2.
2 over 2. Because 2 over 2 is equal to?
6. 1 whole.
It's equal to. Remember our book does this out to it? It's equal to 1. Right? And anything times 1 is itself, so 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. So now I have 1 and 2, 6. Now, when I rewrite my problem, 3 and 1, 6, minus 2 and 2, 6. You see my new problem? Can I take 2 out of 1? No. So now I have to rename my whole number. How am I going to rename my whole number here?
You're going to estimate
2 and what? 2 and 6, 6. This is still 3. So 3 equals 2 and 6, 6. Okay? Now once I have the 2 and 6, 6, I have to add the fraction that's already there.
That would be 7 over 6.
So now I have 2 and 7, 6. Okay? Now I can rewrite my problem. 2, 7, 6, minus 2, and 2, 6, equals. 2 minus 2 is? What's 2 minus 2?
0.
7 minus 2 is? 5. The common denominator is 6, that stays the same. So my answer is 5/6. See how we did that?
What is that? On the floor. I mean, on the tool. That thing next to the big huge T. What is that? Yeah. Now, can I get a Band-Aid?
Okay, you guys are on your own. Band, you only have a couple minutes before you're out of the class. This will be up on our website, so if you need help tonight, by all means, use it. Mr. Brendan, what are you doing? I'll give you just a second.
Can I get a Band-Aid now?
Said yes.
Oh, please.